It has been a long day. The air has softened around you, as if the world itself has decided to rest. You can let your body sink into the quiet now. Let your thoughts drift, slow, unhurried, like dust floating through a shaft of light. Beyond the window, where the horizon fades into deep blue, a faint red glow lingers. That light has traveled for millions of years to reach you. It comes from Mars, the quiet ember of our solar family, glowing patiently in the dark. Tonight, we will not rush to conquer it. We will simply listen to the stillness, to the distance, to the soft story of a world waiting to be touched. Because even in silence, the universe is still speaking. Far beyond the last fires of an ancient camp, where the desert cooled after a long day of sun, a faint red light lingered low above the horizon. It did not flicker like the other stars. It did not rise or fade like the moon. It moved slowly, steadily, like a watcher crossing the night, long before there were telescopes or the word planet. People noticed that light and kept returning to it in their thoughts. In the cities of the two rivers, where clay tablets were still wet and priests read the sky like a sacred book, they wrote about that wandering red star. The Babylonians saw in it something fierce, something that did not belong to the gentle gods of rain or harvest. They called it Nergal, the lord of war and sickness, whose coming could mean heat, blood, unrest. For them, that glow was not just beautiful. It was a warning flame drifting across heaven, a sign that the sky itself could be sharp. Yet even in their fear, there was fascination. They tracked it, counted it, waited for it to return to the same part of the sky, the way someone waits for a messenger they do not fully trust. Fear was the first doorway, but curiosity was the one they walked through. Across the sea, under other myths and constellations, the same red star found new names. The Greeks gave it to Ares, the god of battle. The Romans, who loved order and conquest, called it Mars. Different languages, different empires, the same impression. This one is not calm. This one burns. The color did most of the speaking. In a night of silver and blue, a single red point looked like iron fresh from the forge, like blood seen by firelight, like an ember that refused to die. To ancient eyes that lived close to drought, war, and hunger, red meant power. Red meant heat. Red meant a god you should not ignore. And still, every night, they looked up. Imagine the scene slow and wide. A line of dunes stretching into silence, air holding a little of the day's warmth. A lone figure stands barefoot, sand cool beneath their feet, staring into the darkness. And there it is, a single red eye looking back. No chariots, no ships, no science, only a human face tipped toward the sky and a planet glowing patiently with quiet fire. The drums of a distant village beat like a soft heart against the sand. Smoke curls, vanishes, and the light remains, steady, unmoving, ancient. It had been there before the walls and the kings. It would stay when their names were gone. That stillness, that persistence, was what drew them closer. If it had flashed like lightning, they would have feared it. If it had vanished, they would have forgotten. But it stayed, and because it stayed, people began to ask, what kind of star moves? What kind of star glows red? What kind of star does not behave like the others? From that small question, astronomy was born. From that light, religion found stories. From that quiet difference, myth learned to name the sky. The red planet was tied to war, to blood, to restless gods. Yet it became the first invitation to study the heavens. Long before science, there was looking. Long before equations, there was listening to light. And long before anyone dreamed of landing there, they had already met Mars in their sleep. What began as fear slowly turned into wonder, a reminder that curiosity often begins in the dark. In the quiet ages before science had a name, the night sky was a map without borders. Countless points of light burned with stillness, each one fixed in its eternal place. Yet a few among them were restless. Night after night, while the constellations stood unmoved, these few lights drifted, slowly, deliberately, as if walking across the heavens. They were called planetae in the ancient Greek tongue, the wanderers. To the people who watched the skies, these wanderers were strange companions. They did not belong to any single pattern of stars. They wandered through constellations, appearing one season and vanishing the next, gliding just enough for the eye to notice. The ancients marked their paths on parchment, traced their return with strings and stones, whispering that perhaps these lights were not stars at all, but travelers, gods moving between worlds. The Greeks, whose nights were clear and salt-scented from the Aegean, were among the first to give this motion a meaning. They looked up from their marble courtyards, the air humming with crickets, and saw the red point of Mars slipping between the frozen stars. To them, this slow motion was not chaos, but intention. Everything that wandered must have purpose. The word planetae carried not only the image of movement, but the spirit of seeking, of something that does not belong in one place for long. Imagine a night like theirs. The horizon dark as wine, the sea a mirror of faint stars. Above, the wanderers move with patient grace. They are quiet, but they change everything. The shepherd on the hill, the sailor steering by starlight, the scholar scratching on clay, all look up and feel the same unease, the same pull of curiosity. If the heavens could move, what else might change? If these lights were not fixed, perhaps nothing truly was. In time, these moving stars became more than omens. They became questions. People began to follow their paths, to predict their returns, to measure the way they drifted through constellations. The wanderers became teachers, tracing invisible circles that would one day reveal the order of the cosmos. From their slow, steady motion, the idea of planets was born. Worlds that moved, each carrying its own rhythm, its own silence, its own story. The sky, once thought perfect and unmoving, was suddenly alive. Its calm surface hid a quiet dance of orbits and gravity, though no one yet knew those words. All they could see was that some lights refused to stay still. And that defiance, gentle and constant, became a kind of hope. Perhaps the gods were not distant. Perhaps they were traveling, patient, unseen, but near. Every civilization found comfort in that thought. To know that some stars moved was to believe that nothing, not even the heavens, was beyond change. The wanderers reminded them that motion is not loss, that drifting is not the same as being lost. In their slow migration, the ancients heard a lesson whispered through the ages, that everything that moves is searching for light, and everything that shines has once been a wanderer. In the end, the name remained planetae, the wanderers. They still cross our skies tonight, moving as softly as they did thousands of years ago, carrying the memory of those first human eyes that noticed their path. And somewhere between their motion and our wonder lies a quiet truth. Those who wander are never truly lost. They're simply learning where the light lives. Among all the lights that wander across the night, one glows closer, warmer, and more familiar than the rest. It is not the brightest, nor the largest, but it carries a color that feels alive. Mars, the red planet, has burned in human memory for as long as eyes have turned toward the dark. It was named for war, for struggle, for the heat of passion and fear. Yet its light has always been steady, patient, and calm. Across centuries, through clouds of history and time, that red shimmer has never gone out. To ancient watchers, it became an immortal flame suspended in the sky, a candle that neither wind nor night could erase. If you look closely, the light of Mars does not rage. It does not flare or fade. It simply remains. It hums in the silence between stars, a constant pulse of quiet fire. To the human eye, that red glow feels almost tender, a reminder that not all fires destroy. Some only warm from afar. In the old nights, when sailors steered by the heavens, Mars guided them as gently as the moon. For those who wandered deserts, it was a familiar mark above the dunes, a companion in the emptiness. To see it was to remember that even the void had color, and that color was red, deep and breathing like a living thing. Imagine standing beneath a vast sky with no noise except the wind. Around you, darkness folds like a soft blanket, and far away, one small flame flickers against infinity. It looks fragile, yet it has endured everything. Storms, centuries, the turning of civilizations. Every generation has looked at that same flame and called it by a different name. God, omen, planet, home. And every time, it answered with the same light. Mars has always been close enough to see, yet far enough to remain untouchable. It is the neighbor we can visit with our eyes, but not our hands. Perhaps that is why people have loved it so long. Because it lets them imagine without possessing. It stays just out of reach, inviting thought instead of conquest. To look at Mars is to feel the balance between distance and connection, between knowing and wonder. Through telescopes and myths, through stories whispered by firelight, that red glow has become a mirror for human longing. The warriors saw a god of battle. The dreamers saw a world to understand. But beneath both visions, the truth stayed the same. The flame never meant harm. It only burned because the universe gave it that color, and light can only do what it was born to do: shine. So when you see Mars tonight, try not to think of war or fear. Think instead of a candle burning quietly in the dark, steady, unwavering, unchanged. Its glow is not a warning, but an invitation, calling you to pause, to breathe, to look a little longer. The red light doesn't threaten. It simply asks you to come closer, and somewhere within its warmth, you may find that every distant flame, no matter how far, is only reminding us how to see the night more gently. Far from the golden warmth of the sun, beyond the soft blue of Earth and the pale shimmer of Venus, there lies a path traced in quiet precision: the fourth orbit. Along this invisible circle drifts a small red world, forever balanced between light and darkness. At 228 million kilometers away, Mars moves through space with a patience that only the cosmos can afford. Its path is steady, its rhythm unchanged for billions of years, a slow dance around the star that gave it life. In the great ocean of space, the orbit of Mars is like a ring of quiet fire. It glows faintly, unseen to the naked eye, but every motion follows an ancient rhythm, even measured, unhurried. Around it lies the asteroid belt, a vast frontier of rock and dust, millions of fragments circling like forgotten memories of worlds that never formed. To stand on Mars and look toward that boundary would be to see the edge of order itself, where the calm of planets gives way to the wild debris of creation. The sunlight that reaches Mars is thinner, cooler, older by minutes of travel. Shadows stretch longer there, and the air, if it could be called that, barely holds warmth. The planet breathes slower than Earth, turning beneath a colder sky. But there is beauty in its restraint. Each orbit is a year drawn in wide circles, a loop of time written with dust and distance. From afar, it might seem lonely, but there is peace in such solitude, a kind of grace that comes only from moving in silence. Astronomers once called Mars Earth's twin, though it is smaller, lighter, and far less forgiving. Yet when they charted its orbit, they found a balance that felt familiar. It was close enough to see, far enough to dream about. A neighbor separated not by hostility, but by the mathematics of space. Between the two worlds lies nothing but light and waiting. In that waiting, humanity learned something essential. That distance is not rejection, only a form of timing. Imagine a solar system as a great clock, each planet a hand moving at its own pace. Mercury races, Jupiter lingers. But Mars glides in the middle rhythm, calm, deliberate, never rushing to meet or flee the sun. If you could listen closely, you might hear the faint hum of its orbit, a soundless whisper that says, everything has its turn, everything keeps its distance, and still everything belongs. The fourth orbit is a circle of patience, carved by gravity, painted in red. It reminds us that even in the vastness, there is order. Even in the cold, there is movement. Mars has followed this path since long before our kind could name it, and it will continue long after the last voice fades. Distance, after all, is the universe's way of teaching us to wait. And in that waiting, there is harmony. Because in the language of space, distance is not absence. It is the shape of longing and the rhythm of return. Between the burning heart of the sun and the frozen silence beyond Jupiter lies a delicate band of possibility, the Goldilocks zone. It is the region where warmth and cold find their fragile balance, where liquid water can exist without turning to vapor or ice. Earth drifts within this soft cradle of temperature and light, and so too does Mars, resting at its outer edge like a quiet neighbor near the border of dawn. It is the thin line between comfort and extinction, a ribbon of warmth stretched across the endless dark. Scientists call it by a simple name, but in truth, it is one of the most exquisite coincidences in the universe. Not too close to burn, not too far to freeze, just right. Within this narrow distance, sunlight arrives not as fire, but as breath. On Earth, it gives rise to oceans, clouds, and rain. On Mars, it touches the rust-colored plains more faintly, like the glow of a candle reaching the edge of a room. The air there is thin, the heat weak, yet the possibility lingers. The memory of rivers long gone, the traces of channels carved by flowing water that no longer runs. Imagine this zone as a warm band wrapped around the sun, glowing gently between two extremes. Inside it, a planet may hold oceans, winds, and the chemistry of life. Step a little closer, and everything melts away. Step too far, and even light cannot wake the ice. Mars sits at that boundary, where warmth fades into frost. It is the outer edge of comfort, a place where water once existed, where it may still hide beneath the dust in secret reservoirs waiting to be found. The balance of the Goldilocks zone feels almost like kindness. It allows for imperfection, for change, for growth, for time. A planet need not be perfect. It only needs to be close enough to the sun's gentle reach to remember what warmth feels like. In that remembrance lies hope. Mars, though cold and dry now, still carries the marks of its warmer youth. Valleys shaped by floods, minerals forged in ancient lakes. These are its quiet memories, written not in words, but in stone. To live in such a zone is a miracle of placement, a harmony of distance and a timing. The universe is vast and mostly inhospitable. Yet here, in this narrow band, the ingredients of life have found a way to breathe. Perhaps that is the real beauty of balance, that it is rare, temporary, and endlessly worth protecting. When we speak of the Goldilocks zone, we are really speaking of fragility, of how everything that lives depends on a line invisible to the eye but vital to existence. Mars reminds us of that balance, a world so close to home, yet just far enough to show what happens when the scale tips. And still, in its quiet orbit, it keeps moving through the sunlight, as if remembering what warmth once felt like. Balance, after all, is not permanence. It is the brief and precious space where life learns to breathe, the rarest kind of magic. Across the silent plains of Mars, the ground is marked with circles, vast, ancient, and perfectly still. They are craters, the imprints of stone and fire from a time when the young solar system was still wild. Each one is a wound left by an encounter with something that once drifted too close, a memory pressed into dust and frozen soil. From orbit, they look like eyes staring upward, watching eternity pass. In the thin light of dawn, their rims catch a pale shimmer, and the shadows inside them stretch for miles, dark and cold. Mars sits near the asteroid belt, the border between order and chaos. Out there, millions of fragments orbit the sun, pieces of rock that never became planets, reminders of how violent creation once was. Some of them escaped their paths and found new ones, their journeys ending here, on the red world's quiet skin. The collisions carved out basins deep enough to hold cities, some large enough to be seen from Earth. The scars never faded. Without oceans or forests to cover them, they remained, timeless signatures of impact, untouched by rain or wind. Imagine standing on the rim of one such crater. The air is thin, nearly silent. Beneath your feet, the ground curves away like the edge of a vast bowl. Every direction you look, there is stillness, no sound, no life, only the echo of something that once was motion. The rocks below you are older than any story, melted and frozen again, holding the memory of an instant so violent that it burned itself into permanence. Here, even silence has texture. Scientists believe these craters record the rhythm of time itself, the long heartbeat of the planet. The older the crater, the fainter its edges. Some overlap, layered like wrinkles, each one marking another chapter in the planet's slow aging. When sunlight sweeps across them, the shadows move like clock hands, measuring hours on a world that has no ticking sound. To watch those shadows glide is to glimpse how patient the universe truly is. Yet there is beauty in these scars. They tell the story of endurance, of a planet that has taken every blow and continued to turn. Mars, though quiet now, carries the history of its storms in plain sight. Each impact was both destruction and renewal. Dust lifted into the air, settling later to paint the planet red. The same iron that colors its surface came from these moments of chaos, scattered and burned, then left to glow under the sun. From Earth, when we see Mars as the small red light, we cannot see its craters. We only sense their presence in that steady glow, as if every wound had learned to shine. Perhaps that is the nature of time. It softens the edges of even the hardest events, leaving not pain but pattern. Each crater is a reminder that the universe remembers in its own quiet way. Every scar, no matter how cold, holds a piece of light. And in that light, Mars looks back, not angry, not broken, only ancient and awake, keeping watch on the long night of creation. On a quiet night in 1610, a man stood beneath the Tuscan sky, his breath visible in the cool air. The world around him was asleep, but above, the heavens were alive. In his hands, a narrow tube of glass and wood, something small, fragile, and new, trembled ever so slightly. Through that tube, light gathered and bent, carrying secrets from places no human eye had ever truly seen. Galileo Galilei leaned closer, the curve of the lens reflecting a faint shimmer across his face. Somewhere within that small circle of glass, the red world of Mars came into view, steady and distant, like a spark caught in still water. Until that night, Mars had only been a story told through myth and fear, a moving point of red light drifting among fixed stars. But now it was something more, a world. Galileo saw it as a disk, not just a pin of light. It shifted in size as the nights passed, sometimes larger, sometimes smaller, proving that it moved in its own path around the sun. This was not a god nor an omen. It was a planet following its quiet law of motion, part of a greater harmony that stretched beyond imagination. In that realization, the sky changed forever. Imagine his heartbeat in the silence, the soft creak of wood as he adjusted the focus, the distant murmur of the city below fading into nothing. For a moment, it was only him and the light of another world. The faint tremor of the lens, the steady drift of Mars across his view. They must have felt like a conversation, a whisper of understanding shared across the void. The same light that had once frightened kings and priests now rested gently in the eyes of a single observer who dared to ask what it truly was. What Galileo found was not just movement in the heavens, but order, a pattern, a rhythm that belonged to no single deity but to the universe itself. He wrote what he saw, measured, compared, and in doing so, pulled the stars closer to human thought. His telescope, no larger than a child's toy by today's standards, became a bridge between myth and truth. Through that fragile glass, the cosmos began to reveal its symmetry, and the boundaries of heaven and earth quietly blurred. There is something deeply human in that moment. The act of looking deeper, of not being satisfied with wonder alone. Galileo's sight was not only of the eyes, but of the spirit. To observe is to care, and to care is to belong. In that sense, his discovery was also a kind of reflection. Every time he looked up, the universe looked back. The lens did not just magnify light, it magnified our place within it. Even now, when modern telescopes can see farther and clearer, the echo of that night remains. It was the first time Mars was truly seen not as a symbol, but as a companion, a world among worlds. part of a vast design. Galileo's trembling hand steadied the first vision of that truth, and in doing so, he changed how we see ourselves. Because anyone who looks closely into the universe, sooner or later, learns to look back and finds in that reflection both awe and peace. In the winter of 1659, a single candle burned in a quiet study in The Hague. The flame leaned slightly toward an open window where the cold air of night carried the scent of the sea. At a wooden desk, Christian Huygens sat with his telescope beside him, a small circle of glass aimed toward the stars. For many nights, he had watched Mars drift across the sky, noting its changes in shape and shadow. Tonight, he began to draw. The tip of his pen moved slowly over the paper, tracing what his eye had seen through the trembling lens. Each stroke was deliberate, uncertain, as if he were touching the surface of another world from across the darkness. Through the narrow tube of glass, Mars revealed something no one had ever seen clearly before. A pattern, a dark region near its equator that shifted with the planet's turning. He called it Certis Major, the first mark of geography ever recorded on another world. It was not merely a point of light now, but a place with features, contrasts, and motion. As the nights passed, he watched a shadow move, reappear, and disappear again until he realized that Mars turned once every 24 hours, almost the same as Earth. In that discovery lay a quiet intimacy, a reminder that this distant red world shared something familiar with home. Huygens' hand trembled slightly as he worked, not from fear or cold, but from the realization that what he was seeing belonged to history. The ink bled faintly into the fibers of the parchment, spreading like the thin dust of Mars itself. Every mark he made carried both precision and wonder. To chart something so far away was to blur the distance between imagination and proof. He could not touch the planet, yet through careful eyes and steady patience, he had already reached it. The room around him was silent except for the faint scratch of the pen and the soft breath of the candle. Outside, the wind stirred the branches, but inside, time seemed to stop. There was only the circle of light on his desk and the slow movement of a mind trying to turn vision into knowledge. The drawing that took shape was not just a map. It was a bridge between seeing and understanding. With each line, he illuminated a little more of the unknown. Knowledge, he must have realized, is not a sudden blaze, but a slow accumulation of sparks. Galileo had lit the first one. Now Huygens was tending its glow. Together, their work would form the quiet foundation of how we know the cosmos, not through conquest, but through attention. The universe, when studied with care, rewards those who listen more than those who shout. When the final mark was made, he set down the pen and leaned back, watching the ink dry. The candlelight danced over the map, flickering across the rough lines that now represented a planet. It was imperfect, fragile, and yet astonishing. A human hand capturing the face of another world. In that moment, Huygens must have felt the same calm that Mars itself holds, steady, patient, turning endlessly under the same light that shines on us. Knowledge is not a bright lamp, but a small flame passed from one heart to another. And on that night, it burned quietly in the dark. The summer of 1817 settled softly over Milan. In a quiet observatory, Giovanni Schiaparelli bent over the eyepiece of his telescope, a finely crafted 22-centimeter instrument that trembled faintly under his touch. The air shimmered with the heat of the evening, and above, Mars burned brighter than it had in years. Through the lens, its surface rippled with shades of red and shadow, the boundary between light and darkness alive with subtle movement. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass for an instant, then clearing again to reveal something that took his mind, and soon the world's imagination, far beyond reason. He saw lines, thin, straight, and seemingly deliberate. They stretched across the planet's face like a web of faint threads. They connected darker regions to lighter planes, and the more he looked, the more certain they seemed. He called them canali, channels, not canals, though in translation, the word took on a different life. In that single slip of meaning, the red world was reborn as a world of architects, engineers, and dreamers. The thought spread like wildfire through the drawing rooms of Europe and the observatories of America. There might be life on Mars, not just life, but intelligence, a civilization mapping its own world with rivers carved by design. Schiaparelli did not claim such grandeur, but the idea found a voice of its own. The public's imagination filled in what his telescope could not confirm. The night skies were no longer silent. They whispered of other beings looking back, perhaps with instruments of their own. Artists painted crimson landscapes crisscrossed with blue waterways. Writers spoke of Martian cities gleaming under twin moons. And for a moment, humanity looked upward with something more than curiosity. It was longing. The dream of connection had taken shape through an error of sight. And yet, it was beautiful. In truth, what Schiaparelli had seen was an illusion. The fragile trick of light and distance. The human eye, when faced with uncertainty, often creates order where there is none. It connects scattered shadows into lines, patterns, and meaning. When later astronomers observed Mars through clearer lenses, the canals vanished like mist. The surface returned to its quiet chaos of craters and plains. But the dream lingered. The mistake had already done its work. Even false visions can lead to true discovery. Because of those imagined canals, humanity built better telescopes, asked bolder questions, and reached farther into the void. The illusion, instead of discrediting science, ignited it. Schiaparelli's gentle error became the spark for a century of exploration. The same dream that would one day send real machines across the gulf of space to touch that dusty soil. Sometimes, truth begins with a mirage. The universe allows us to see not only what is real, but what we need to believe long enough to keep searching. Schiaparelli looked through glass and saw more than Mars. He saw possibility. The canals were never carved in stone. They were drawn in light across the surface of human imagination. And like all dreams, they vanished with the dawn, leaving behind not disappointment, but wonder. For even mistakes, when made in curiosity, can shape the way we reach for the stars. On Mars, everything moves slower and everything weighs less. The pull beneath your feet, that invisible thread tying you to the ground, is weaker there, only a third of what it is on Earth. A single step would feel like a soft leap. Dust would linger longer in the air before settling again. Even your heartbeat might sound different, lighter somehow, echoing through a thinner sky. If you could walk there, each stride would carry you twice as far, as though the planet itself were letting you drift just a little before calling you back. Mars is only half the size of Earth, its body carved smaller by the hand of creation. From a distance, that difference seems simple, a matter of scale. But scale changes everything. Its gravity, 3.7 meters per second squared, is not just a number. It is a sensation. It defines how stones fall, how dust rises, how mountains grow taller and valleys stretch wider. Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system, could only exist in such a gentle pull. Under Earth's weight, it would collapse under its own height. Lightness, it seems, allows things to reach higher before breaking. To stand on that world would be to stand in a dream where falling no longer means fear. A dropped pebble would drift slowly downward, hesitating before it lands. Your body too would hesitate, unsure whether to return or to stay suspended. The horizon would seem closer, the ground more forgiving. Yet, in that softness, a quiet loneliness would unfold, as though the planet itself were keeping its distance, unwilling to hold too tightly. The air, so thin it could not carry your voice, would turn your breath into silence. In that silence, you might realize how heavy Earth's comfort truly was. Gravity is not only a force, it is a kind of relationship. On Earth, it binds oceans, holds our atmosphere, anchors our steps. On Mars, that bond loosens. The weight of existence becomes a whisper instead of a command. Astronauts who train for Martian gravity often describe the sensation as being between floating and falling, a limbo where every movement feels like both freedom and fragility. To be that light is to be reminded of how much we depend on being held. And yet, there's beauty in that lightness. In a world where gravity does not press as hard, dust can dance longer in the wind and shadows stretch farther before fading. It is as if Mars breathes more slowly than Earth, exhaling gently across millennia. The red plains remember every footprint because nothing heavy enough has come to erase them. Perhaps that is the lesson of smaller gravity, that the lighter the step, the longer the trace endures. To exist on Mars would be to move carefully, to touch softly, to learn again how to belong. Because when the ground holds you only loosely, every motion becomes a choice. And in that fragile balance between floating and falling, the universe reminds us, the less we are bound, the more we must cherish the ground beneath our feet. On Mars, the sun rises slowly, climbing the pale sky with a kind of quiet reluctance. The light there is softer than on Earth, filtered through dust that turns gold into rust and shadow into violet haze. It spreads across the plains, inch by inch, as if the planet were in no rush to wake. A Martian day lasts 24 hours and 40 minutes, almost familiar, but stretched just enough to feel eternal. Time lingers there, unhurried and calm, like a breath held between sunrise and sunset. When the sun finally reaches its peak, its warmth feels distant, faint. The horizon glows a dim amber, and every rock casts a shadow longer than memory. Then, slowly, the light begins to fade again. Twilight lasts for hours, a gentle blur between day and night, until the cold takes over. The stars return in silence, clear and sharp, the same ones seen from Earth, but arranged under a slower rhythm. Even time itself seems to exhale differently here, expanding with the thin air. Mars tilts on its axis by 25 degrees, almost the same as Earth. That small angle gives it seasons, winter and summer, light and dark, though each lasts twice as long. A year on Mars stretches across 1.8 of hours, long enough for an explorer to grow older before spring comes again. The planet turns, but gently. Its clock doesn't tick, it hums. Dust storms rise and fall with the calm precision of tides. Frost gathers at the poles, melts, then gathers again in a rhythm too vast for human impatience to follow. To live on Mars would be to live within a slower heartbeat. Every movement of light and shadow would teach a kind of patience that Earth has long forgotten. The sunrise would come not as a burst, but as a gradual unveiling, a reminder that beginnings need not rush to be real. Even the wind, carrying whispers of sand across the plains, seems to move in contemplation. In such a place, time is not an enemy or a boundary. It is a companion, walking quietly beside you. Astronomers once measured those long rotations, marking the planet's hours and seasons, and found in them a strange familiarity. Mars may be far, but its rhythm is kindred. Its days stretch only a little longer. Its tilt mirrors our own. It is as though the universe wrote two versions of the same song. One played a little slower, softer, more wistful. Listening to it, one can almost sense the pause between beats, the silence where thought becomes understanding. Time on Mars teaches a lesson not in urgency but in stillness. The days do not hurry, the years do not chase. They wait. They wait for light to return, for frost to fade, for dust to settle. And perhaps, in that waiting, they remind us of something deeply human. That our own time too is not meant to be conquered, but felt. The sun will rise, always slower than we expect. And every dawn, whether on Earth or Mars, is simply the universe asking us to listen. At the farthest ends of Mars, where sunlight touches only briefly before vanishing again, lie the quiet crowns of the planet, the polar caps. They shimmer faintly under the thin red glow, gleaming like glass under frost. From orbit, they appear as pale spirals of white against the rust-colored plains, breathing in and out with the rhythm of the seasons. These are not the frozen waters of Earth's poles, but ice made of air itself. Solid carbon dioxide, what we call dry ice. It gathers and melts with the coming and going of light, a cycle of freezing breath at the edge of space. In the south, the ice endures year-round, a permanent cap nearly 8 meters thick, holding to the darkness even through the sunlit months. In the north, the frost spreads wider, 1,000 kilometers across when the planet tilts away from the sun. Under the faint warmth of Martian spring, it thins and retreats, releasing gas into the cold sky until the next winter comes. The poles breathe in their own slow way, turning carbon into mist, then back into crystal. It is the planet's quiet respiration, ancient and endless. If you could stand there, the air would seem almost still. The wind would sound like a whisper passing over stone, its chill carrying a faint brittle hiss as it brushed against the ice. Each grain of frost would sparkle with the last touch of sunlight before it fades into the long night. Shadows stretch across the frozen plains, moving so slowly that they seem carved into time. The cold here is not cruel, only patient. It has waited for billions of years, preserving silence the way memory preserves love. Fragile, invisible, but unbroken. Scientists studying those poles see them as more than beauty. They are records of climate written in layers of frost. Each winter leaves a thin sheet behind, a frozen echo of air that once drifted elsewhere. When the next season comes, it adds its own layer, a new page in a story told without words. Over time, those layers build into archives of the planet's breath, evidence of shifting weather, ancient atmosphere, and quiet change. Mars remembers through lies, not through sound. The sight of those polar caps reminds us that cold, too, has meaning. It is not the absence of warmth, but its memory, the echo of light that once was. In every frozen particle lies the trace of the sun, trapped and waiting to return. Even the harshest frost begins as heat, transformed by distance and a time into stillness. That stillness, stretched across the poles of Mars, is both an ending and a promise. Perhaps that is why the planet glows so softly at its edges, because its coldest places still hold the faintest warmth. The frost breathes, the wind hums, and beneath it all lies the simple truth that nothing ever truly disappears. Even the cold remembers the fire that made it, and in that memory, the planet keeps dreaming of warmth, of light, of the long return of spring. There was a time when two worlds within one world looked up to the same sky and dreamed of reaching the same red light. The decade was the 1960s, an age of tension, ambition, and wonder. On opposite sides of Earth, two nations stood beneath their own dawns, building towers of flame that would one day pierce the quiet above. In the East, the Soviet Union prepared its Marsnik probes, vessels of metal and courage. In the West, the United States readied its mariner crafts, delicate yet daring. Neither side could see the other, yet both were aiming toward the same destination: Mars, the distant ember that had watched humanity for millennia. Imagine it now, two rockets, two trails of fire rising from opposite horizons of the same planet. One over the steppes of Baikonur, the other from the deserts of Florida. Both lift through clouds and silence, leaving Earth's gravity behind in a slow, shuddering roar. From space, their flames are no longer rivals. They become twin sparks, moving into the dark, following the same curve of orbit toward a red dot hanging like a promise in the void. Even competition, it seems, can look like harmony when seen from far enough away. The race to Mars was not a race of hatred, but of yearning. Beneath the language of rivalry, there was the same human pulse: curiosity. The Soviets launched first, their Marsnik missions striving to reach the unknown, though many were lost to the silence between worlds. The Americans followed with Mariner 4, whose small lens would one day send back the first close images of the Martian surface. Grey, barren, and quiet. For the first time, Mars was no longer a myth, but a place. Not a god, but a world of stone and sky. Each success, each failure became part of a shared journey rather than a divided one. Every time a probe left Earth, it carried the weight of both pride and hope. And in the darkness of space, pride fades faster than wonder. The same physics guided both nations, the same laws of gravity, the same gentle hum of the cosmos holding their creations steady. The universe did not choose sides. It only listened patiently as humanity tried to reach beyond itself. When those early missions failed, fragments fell silently back into the atmosphere, burning briefly before vanishing. Yet, nothing was truly lost. Each fall taught a lesson. Each flame lit another attempt. By the end of the decade, the world had learned to see the race not as a conflict, but as a collective awakening. Two flames, two paths, one horizon. The dream was no longer about who would arrive first, but that arrival was even possible at all. And perhaps that is the quiet truth hidden inside every contest of discovery. That even when we compete, we are still moving in the same direction. The rockets of the 60s may have risen from different lands, but their light met in the same sky. From afar, they looked like one gesture, a single trembling reach towards something beautiful, far and red. Because even in rivalry, light still travels together. In December of 1971, after months drifting through the dark, a small machine built by human hands began its final descent toward the red dust of Mars. Its name was Mars 3, a quiet vessel sent from the Soviet Union, carrying no people, only the hope of millions. For minutes that stretched like hours, it fell through the thin Martian air, wrapped in fire and radio silence. Then, at last, its engines slowed, its legs extended, and for the first time in history, something from Earth touched another planet's soil. There was no cheer, no anthem, only a faint, trembling sound that reached across the void, a whisper through static. In a control room far away, engineers leaned forward, eyes fixed on instruments glowing pale green. The signal arrived, weak, fragile, but real. A heartbeat in noise. It lasted for 20 seconds, perhaps a little more, before dissolving into silence. The image feed never came. The data froze mid-transmission, somewhere in that gap between worlds. The first message from another planet vanished into the hum of the cosmos. But even in loss, something profound had happened. For the first time, the distance between Earth and Mars had been crossed by touch. Imagine the surface then. The faint hiss of wind brushing across the lander's metal shell, dust settling slowly around its feet. The horizon stretched endless and still, tinted with a faint blush of dawn. The machine stood there in solitude, a monument of courage and fragility. Above it, the twin moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos, traced quiet arcs through the amber sky. No one saw it happen, but the universe had noticed. A small point of light from Earth had finally arrived. Scientists often speak of Mars 3 as a failure, but perhaps that word is too small. Its silence was not defeat. It was the sound of the first breath before speech. The mission proved that landing was possible, that the barrier between dreaming and doing could be crossed, even if only for seconds. Those moments of static carried the weight of centuries of longing, of all who had ever looked at the red planet and wondered what it felt like. That short-lived signal was enough to change everything. Sometimes history does not announce itself with fireworks, but with quiet. The first step on Mars did not echo, but it resonated, deep and far in the hearts of those who had listened. It reminded us that discovery is not always about what we find, but about the courage to reach. The universe rarely gives answers easily. Often, it answers only with silence. But even silence, when it follows such an act, becomes sacred. Mars 3 never spoke again, but its whisper remains. Still traveling, perhaps, through the dust and distance, a fragment of sound folded into the wind. And in that whisper lies a truth that endures. Sometimes a single breath, a single flicker of connection is enough to alter the course of everything that follows. Because every great beginning starts softly, like the quiet touch of one world meeting another for the very first time. Between the dark of space and the rust-red plains below lies a veil, delicate, deceptive, and difficult. The atmosphere of Mars is not empty, but neither is it full. It is thin enough that parachutes struggle to slow a fall, yet thick enough to burn a ship as it enters. To reach the surface, a spacecraft must survive both extremes: heat and cold, speed and stillness, descent and silence. It must bear the chaos of fire, then the quiet of landing. The Martian air is a paradox, a gate that tests every visitor before letting them in. As a craft begins its fall, it meets the first edge of that invisible wall. The friction grows, unseen but relentless, wrapping the metal in flame. The heat shield glows gold, then orange, then white. Sparks trail behind it like stars being born. Inside, instruments tremble as air pushes harder, thinner, louder. There is no sky yet, only turbulence. In those moments, everything depends on balance, the right angle, the right timing, the perfect cooperation of heat, fabric, and thrust. A second too late, and the flame wins. A fraction too early, and gravity pulls faster than help can arrive. Then comes the second trial, the parachute. It blooms open like a bright flower in the dark, trembling as the thin air clutches at it. It is both savior and risk, too small to slow enough, too large to hold steady. Beneath it, the spacecraft sways and spins, caught between weight and wind. Below, the surface waits, red, silent, patient. The planet doesn't hurry, it watches. And finally, the third motion, the jets. Small bursts of controlled fire pushing downward, easing the descent one last time. The ship hovers briefly, suspended between sky and ground, before the legs unfold and the dust rises in a gentle cloud. The roaring of entry fades into a stillness so complete that it feels like the planet has been holding its breath. The wind returns, soft and slow, brushing against the metal shell as if in greeting. After minutes of fury, there is peace. Engineers call it the 7 minutes of terror, but in truth, it is closer to 7 minutes of transformation. A machine born of Earth burns through resistance, fights against the edge of the unknown, and learns to rest upon another world. Each landing on Mars is not just a feat of technology. It is an act of faith, in precision, in patience, in the idea that even the thinnest air can hold us if we trust it long enough. Perhaps that is the lesson hidden in the red haze of descent. That some things are hard to reach, not because they reject us, but because they ask us to arrive gently. Mars doesn't welcome force. It opens only to those who slow down, who balance fire with calm, who wait through the noise for silence. And when that silence finally comes, it is not empty. It is the sound of distance surrendering, the long exhale of a world that has finally been touched. Because the harder it is to reach something, the more sacred the moment becomes when you finally do. For centuries, rockets were born to die. They rose once, burned bright, and were gone, their fragments sinking into the sea, their brilliance fading to ash. Every launch was a single breath spent, a story that could never repeat. But now, the age of returning fire has begun. From the quiet plains of Texas to the coasts of Florida, a new kind of rocket rises, and then, astonishingly, comes home again. Its name is Starship, and it carries within its steel skin not just fuel, but a promise. That fire too can learn to return. When a Starship launches, the sky trembles, the engines ignite in a column of light, a controlled storm lifting hundreds of tons of metal into the air. The ground shakes, dust flares, and then, slowly, it drifts upward, leaving Earth behind. It looks like any other rocket for a moment, a brilliant arrow vanishing into the blue. But the difference lies not in how it leaves, but in how it comes back. Minutes after separation, the lower stage begins its fall, spinning, tilting, alive with small bursts of control. The flames that once pushed it upward now guide it home, easing it downward until it lands again softly on the same pad from which it rose. It is a motion that feels almost natural. Ascent and return, exhale and inhale. The fire rises, then folds back into silence. Engineers call it reusability, but in truth, it feels more like renewal. No longer must every launch end in loss. The cycle has closed, like breath returning to lungs. Each successful landing marks not just efficiency, but wisdom. The realization that progress need not come through destruction. The dream behind Starship is vast, a vessel capable of carrying humans across space, perhaps even to Mars. But its true revolution began in this simple act of return. Every time a rocket lands upright, the Earth seems to sigh in relief, as if saying, "You have learned to come back." In that balance of power and precision, something profoundly human is revealed. The ability to change not by force, but by understanding. Fire, once a symbol of consumption, has become a symbol of endurance. To watch one of these landings is to witness the improbable made graceful. The engine reignites, flames bloom, and the ship descends through its own smoke, straight and calm, until its legs touch the ground. The roar fades to quiet. The light softens. A craft that has kissed the edge of space stands whole again, glowing faintly against the dusk. In that stillness lies the lesson of this new age, that creation is not about how high we rise, but how gently we return. The future of exploration depends not only on reaching farther, but on learning to revisit, to renew, to sustain. Every return is a promise of another beginning. And perhaps that is how the path to Mars truly begins. Not with conquest, but with rhythm, with breath, with the simple, steady truth that rebirth starts with the courage to come back home. Before humanity can journey outward to the red plains of Mars, it must first turn its gaze back to the silver world it once touched. The moon, our first frontier, our first reflection in the cosmic mirror, waits patiently in the dark. After decades of absence, NASA prepares to return, guided this time by a vessel born not of disposability, but renewal. Starship, the same machine that learns to rise and return, will carry the Artemis III crew toward that ancient light in 2025. The mission is more than a destination. It is a rehearsal for a longer dream, a quiet step backward before stepping farther than ever before. The plan is simple in structure, but immense in spirit. Starship will launch from Earth, arc through the black, and curve toward the glowing marble that has followed us through every night of our lives. Its path will sweep around the moon, through its pale shadow and back into the reach of sunlight, before lowering gently toward the surface where human footprints once lingered. This time, it will not be a race or a claim. It will be a return. Deliberate, reflective, like touching the edge of memory. The dust that once held the marks of Apollo will soon welcome new steps, lighter but wiser. Imagine the journey. Through the ship's window, the Earth fades into a blue whisper. The stars multiply in the dark, and there, suspended in the distance, the moon glows softly, not white, but silver-gray, its craters glinting with ancient frost. The spacecraft curves toward it, tracing a path like a breath exhaled and then drawn back in. Around the far side, where sunlight never reaches, lies a silence so deep it feels almost sacred. The crew will see Earthrise again. The same view, that once changed how we understood ourselves. One fragile world floating in endless dark. NASA calls Artemis thread the bridge between past and future, a return to learn how to live again. The moon will serve as both a classroom and a proving ground, a place to test the endurance of humans and the trustworthiness of machines. It is the last familiar harbor before the open ocean of interplanetary travel. From there, Mars no longer feels like an impossible distance, but the next horizon waiting beyond the night. In this return to the moon, there is more than ambition. There is humility, the understanding that before reaching farther, we must learn to revisit, to repair, to remember what it means to come home. The moon has always been a mirror, showing us not how far we can go, but how far we have already come. As Starship glides through lunar orbit, its engines quiet, and the silver light folds around it like water, one truth becomes clear. Progress is not a straight line. It bends, loops, revisits, and learns. Before we reach Mars, we must touch again the place that first taught us to dream. Because every great journey outward begins with one soft turn back, toward the light that has never stopped waiting. To reach Mars is to embrace distance in its purest form. Even at its closest, the red planet drifts more than 50 million kilometers away, far enough that radio signals traveling at the speed of light take over 10 minutes just to say hello. A crude journey would need more than 2 years. The voyage there, the waiting for orbits to align, and the long return home. It is not a sprint, but a meditation stretched across the dark. Between the worlds lies a silence too vast to rush through. A silence that asks for patience and rewards only those who can listen. Today, 8 spacecraft circle or rest upon Mars, each one a quiet sentinel keeping watch. Some orbit high above the surface, the cameras gliding over mountains and frozen plains. Others sit on the ground, their instruments humming softly in the cold. They send back streams of data, whispers of dust storms, traces of methane, faint tremors deep within the crust. These signals travel as threads of radio light crossing the gulf between planets like lullabies of metal and wind. The messages arrive weak and delayed, but steady, as if Mars was speaking in its own slow language of patience. Imagine the journey of those invisible waves. They leave the antenna of a rover, slip through the thin Martian air, and rise into the vacuum. For minutes, hours, they glide past drifting dust and faint sunlight, carrying fragments of knowledge encoded in static. Then somewhere near Earth, a dish the size of a small lake catches them, turning the faintest murmur into meaning. Across that distance, the connection feels fragile, and yet it has never broken. In the vastest quiet of all, our technology hums like a heartbeat that will not fade. Each transmission is more than science. It is proof of presence. Mars is no longer silent. It sings in data, in light, in pulses we can measure but not yet touch. Every signal that reaches Earth is a small act of endurance, a reminder that we are still moving towards something, even if slowly. The rovers age, their wheels sinking into dust, their panels dimming under storms, yet they continue to send word home. They wait for us. The planet waits with them. When astronauts one day make the crossing, their journey will unfold at the same rhythm. Long stretches of stillness, broken only by gentle corrections, soft glows of engine fire, and the constant murmur of the stars. The wait will not be empty. It will be filled with motion so slow it feels like thought. Perhaps that is what exploration truly is. Not racing ahead, but dwelling in the in-between, where time expands and meaning deepens. To wait is not to stop. The universe moves even in its quietest hours. Mars, patient and red, turns on its axis. Earth spins beneath clouds and ocean. And between them, the thin threads of radio light continue their endless crossing. The future is already on its way, drifting toward us at the speed of hope. Some nights, when the sky is clear and the world below is quiet, Mars can be seen with the naked eye, a small red spark lingering above the horizon. It looks still, almost fragile, but that faint light has traveled millions of kilometers just to touch the surface of our eyes. And in that brief reflection, something ancient stirs. Not just wonder, but recognition. Because Mars is more than a planet. It is a mirror. Every time we look at it, we are also seeing a reflection of ourselves. Our longing, our solitude, and our stubborn hope that we are not alone. For as long as humanity has existed, it has searched the heavens for meaning. We have given names to lights in the dark, told stories to make sense of their silence. Among them, Mars has always stood apart, a red flame in a sea of white, a sign of power, mystery, and the unknown. Yet, as we learned more, the myths began to dissolve, and what remained was something quieter, more intimate. The closer we looked, the more the planet resembled us. Scarred, beautiful, restless, and waiting. Through telescopes, we saw deserts and canyons shaped by ancient rivers. Through rovers, we found dust that once might have been mud. Each discovery brought us nearer, not only to understanding Mars, but to understanding our own nature. For what drives us to study a world so far away, if not the reflection of our own desire to endure? We look to Mars not because it is red, but because it reminds us of the same fragile balance that holds our home. Light and dark, heat and cold, life and silence. Imagine standing outside at night, the stars above unmoving, the air holding its breath. The faint red glow of Mars rests above the horizon, and for a moment, it feels as if it is watching back. Its light catches in your eyes, two small mirrors facing one another across the void. You are here, it is there, and between you lies the vastness of everything we have yet to learn. Still, connection exists, invisible, undeniable. Perhaps that is the quiet truth of exploration, that when we reach for other worlds, we are really reaching for ourselves. Every probe, every rover, every dream of stepping onto that dusty surface is an echo of the same impulse that once drove us to light fires in the dark. We seek reflection, to see life mirrored somewhere beyond the mirror of the sky, to feel that our small existence is part of something greater. Mars has no eyes, yet it reflects ours perfectly. Its surface tells the story of a world that once had potential, that still waits for touch. And so do we. In the light that travels between us, something profound is shared, a promise that the search for meaning never ends. When we look up, the universe looks back, and in that mutual gaze lies the oldest conversation of all. The silent dialogue between what is human and what has always been beyond human, whispering across time. You are seen. You are part of this. You belong. Mars is often called silent, but that silence is not emptiness. It is the sound of distance made patient. Beneath the thin air and frozen dust, machines built by human hands continue their slow work. They move with care, turning their sensors to the wind, their antennas to the sky. From millions of kilometers away, their signals still come, faint, delayed, and steady. The rovers whisper through radio waves, sending back fragments of memory. The crunch of soil beneath a wheel, the hum of a drill, the echo of wind across a lonely plain. Every few minutes, a pulse of light leaves the planet, travels through the black, and finds its way home. If you could listen closely, those signals would sound like breathing. Soft exhalations of data, each one a heartbeat from a world that has no voice. Across the vacuum, the messages drift, unchanged by time, untouched by noise, until they reach the great dishes of Earth. There, the static unfolds into meaning. Numbers become images, light becomes sound. The silence of Mars transforms into something we can hear, measure, and hold. In that exchange, the universe shows us its gentlest rhythm: transmission and return, question and echo, silence and listening. The rovers themselves move slowly, almost reverently. Perseverance rolls across the ground that curiosity once explored. And before them came spirit and opportunity, each leaving behind tracks that the wind will one day erase. They dig, scan, and wait, working through nights that last longer than human patience could bear. Above them, orbiters glide silently, mapping valleys, tracing dust storms, measuring the pulse of a frozen heart. There are no sounds in the thin Martian air, yet everything hums with purpose. A quiet symphony of motion, too calm to disturb the stillness. Scientists on Earth describe Mars as calm, but it is not asleep. Beneath the red dust, vibrations tremble through the crust. The subtle quakes of a planet still alive in its own way. Its silence is not the silence of death, but of contemplation. It listens, and in that listening, it remembers. Every grain of sand shifted by wind, every layer of frost forming at dawn, all of it is a language too slow for us to hear directly. And yet, through our machines, we begin to translate. Perhaps this is what makes Mars so familiar. It mirrors the quiet within ourselves. The stillness we call silence is often only the space between thoughts, where attention deepens and awareness expands. Mars lives in that space, a planet whose calm invites us to do the same. Its signals may arrive weak and broken, but they remind us that even across the greatest distances, connection persists. The silence of Mars does not end. It receives. It waits. It absorbs our curiosity, our questions, our longing to be understood. And in return, it offers us a reflection of listening itself, the kind that asks for no reply, only presence. Because silence, when you stay with it long enough, is not the absence of sound. It is the way the universe breathes, the way it pays attention, the way it answers, without ever speaking a word. Every night, when the red light of Mars reaches us, it carries more than color. It carries memory. That glow, so calm and steady, is sunlight that has traveled across millions of kilometers, only to find its way home by reflection. It touches the dust that coats the planet, each particle rich with iron, and turns it into a field of quiet fire. That is why Mars shines red, not because it burns, but because it remembers how to hold light. The iron dust scatters the sun's rays, softening their gold into crimson. It is the color of warmth, surviving in coldness, of light choosing to stay even when the source is far away. If you could stand on the surface, you would see that same glow drifting over the horizon like a slow tide. The air, thin and pale, would shimmer with suspended dust, particles so fine they float for days before falling. In that light, every grain becomes a lantern, every breeze a ripple of reflected warmth. When the wind passes, It stirs the dust into small swirling clouds, and the sunlight dances among them, as if the planet itself were breathing in color. From afar, this dance looks eternal. The red that never fades, the flame that never ends. Scientists call it scattering, a simple play of photons against iron oxide. But there is poetry in that process too. Light leaves the sun, journeys through the void, and finds a home on the smallest things, on the quiet surfaces of stones, on grains of dust so small they could rest upon an eyelash. Even when it seems lost, light keeps searching, and when it finds something to hold, it transforms both giver and receiver. The dust glows because the sunlight trusts it enough to linger, and the light continues, traveling again, carrying the color of Mars back toward the stars. That reflected glow is older than memory, constant even when the planet itself is hidden behind clouds or distance. It reminds us that endurance does not always mean strength. Sometimes it simply means persistence, the refusal to stop shining. For billions of years, Mars has reflected light it did not make. And in that reflection, it has become one of the most recognizable lights in our sky. The red you see tonight is the same light that ancient astronomers saw when they named it the God of War. The same that Galileo traced through glass. The same that will one day greet the first human footprints on its soil. Perhaps that is what the red light teaches, that even borrowed brightness can become its own kind of truth. The dust of Mars was once stone, broken by time into fragments. Now those fragments carry the sun. Light does not vanish when it strays. It only changes its path. And so the planet keeps glowing, a flame without fuel, a warmth without fire, a lantern suspended in the deep cold of space. When you look up at that faint red spark, remember, what you see is sunlight that refused to disappear, light that found a new home in the dust of another world. Even lost light, it seems, can find its way back. And in doing so, it reminds us that everything which shines is, in some way, still returning home. You can rest now. The night has quieted, and the world has grown soft again. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon, Mars continues its slow turn beneath the same starlight that touches your skin. The planet breathes in its own rhythm, dust rising, light fading, silence returning, and in that rhythm, your breath finds its place. Every heartbeat, every breath carries the same atoms that once drifted through ancient stars. The iron in your blood, the carbon in your lungs, the calcium in your bones, all were born in the same fire that shaped the red planet above. You and Mars are not strangers. You are fragments of the same story, scattered and shining in different corners of the sky. So, as you close your eyes, let that thought settle like gentle dust across your mind. You are not falling away from the universe. You are drifting home, quietly, slowly, safely, into the light that never left you. You are made of the same dust that still glows on Mars tonight.